He is one of the more popular free agents the Magic could pursue this summer. Every fan has talked about him at some point. We talked about him at the deadline. It's time to talk about him again. The case for and against Tyus Jones on today's episode of Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is May 30th. It will be May 31st, 2024. It's almost June. That's finals. That's NBA draft. A lot to get to as we count down to free agency. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to make the case for and against signing Tyus Jones, a really popular free agent choice among Magic fans. We'll talk why he's so popular and why maybe you should be a little bit concerned, why he may not fit the bill for the Magic. We'll get to all that, plus kind of what Tyus Jones represents on how fast the Magic are moving. We're going to get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for, the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match of up to $100. So we're spending a good chunk of our time with free agency focused on point guards. I think I'm pretty on record about this. I think the biggest need for the Orlando Magic this offseason is at guard. They need to find a playmaking guard. They need to find a shooter to pair with Jalen Suggs and just give this team some space. In fact, Paolo Banchero came out and said it, and we talked about it on the show last week, came out and said it, that what he envisions for this Magic team, and I think he trusts the front office at this point to go out and get it, is to find this team a table setter. Someone who is not necessarily going to take over the ball or take the ball completely out of Paolo Banchero's hands, but someone who is going to be able to just get everyone in the right spots, get the ball to Paolo, get the ball to Franz in spots where they can score, and just be someone who can space that floor for them. And so as we looked at this point guard market, and I think we'll dive a little bit deeper into point guards and what the Magic are looking for here as we just make this discussion, as we get, we'll probably do an episode on that next week. Really, we're not looking for a pound the dirt point guard. We're not looking for a heavy usage point guard. We're looking for a guard that can play make, get downhill a little bit, force some action, kick out, make open threes. The same things we're expecting from every player on this roster, to be able to do a little bit of everything. And so, yes, it is easy to fall in love with the stars. And I think that's going to be the big theme about this episode, is it's easy to get enamored with the big names and the numbers. Paul George, Klay Thompson, those names, DeJounte Murray. It's easy to get enamored with those players. But really what the Magic need is consistency. They need someone that's going to keep things steady and keep this team steady. Enter Tyus Jones of the Washington Wizards. Tyus Jones had a really solid season in his first year as a starter with the Washington Wizards. In their high-paced offense, they were number one in the league in pace, so take some numbers with grains of salt. He averaged 12 points per game, 7.3 assists per game, with just one turnover per game. As I would mention here as well, probably the biggest thing the Magic need to get better at is they need to turn the ball over less. They had a 15% turnover rate, bottom 5 in the league. Something they got, they were able to succeed despite their turnover issues. On top of all this, despite all that, Jones was an excellent three-point shooter, hitting 41.4% of his threes and 42.2% on catch and shoot threes, according to data from Second Spectrum. If you are thinking, where is a point guard who actively sets the table? Where is a point guard who doesn't require the ball, but can still be an excellent player off of others? Where is someone that is a consummate teammate to average 7 assists per game with just 1 turnover? That says a lot. Tyus Jones is that guy. And while he is not the big name that an Anthony Simons is or D'Angelo Russell's, he's not going to be able to maybe score and give you a 20, 25-point game with the same regularity as those two players might. Tyus Jones is consistency. He did it in Memphis. He scaled up in Washington. Granted, fast pace, so counting stats have to be taken with a grain of salt a little bit. But he did that. He did that all, and he showed he can be a starter in this league. Tyus Jones worked, and especially in a fast-paced offense where there is more opportunity for turnovers. To have a 7-to-1 assist-to-turnover rate is insane. That is efficiency, and that is something that the Magic should absolutely want. They were 26th in the league in turnover rate, bottom 5 in the league in turnover rate last year. Paolo Banchero turned the ball over a ton, averaged about 4 turnovers per game, had the 15 turnovers in games 1 and game 2. Paolo understands you don't want to take away all decision-making from him, but he needs to have the ball in his hands less or put the ball in places where he can better take advantage of his decision-making rather than constantly seeing a wall of defenders while already using up his dribble. Getting rid of these turnovers is critical. And this isn't just some flash in the pan. He didn't just have one good turnover year. He had an 8.8% turnover rate overall last year. It was his 3rd straight season with a turnover rate of less than 10%. So if you're looking for your table setter, like a Mike Conley type, we can see how important he is. He has been for Minnesota this year. If you're looking for a Mike Conley type who's going to set the table, get you into your offense, make smart decisions, and then hit an open 3 when given the opportunity, that's who Tyus Jones is. He's coming off a career best season. He's averaged at least 7 assists per 36 minutes in all but 2 of his 9 NBA seasons. He averaged 9 assists per 36 minutes last year. So again, 7 assists per game, 7.3 assists per game. You think that's just a minute increase. It's not. He's been this good. And the Wizards scored a lot off of those assists. He was in the 88th percentile, according to our friends at Basketball Index, with a plus 4.25 roll-adjusted assists per 75 possessions, essentially meaning Jones creates a little more than 4 extra points off assists per 75 possessions than you would expect for a player in his role. It's Washington. I get it. And we're going to talk a little bit here in a minute about why we should take some grains of salt with it being Washington. But the Wizards were a better offensive team with Tyus Jones on the floor. Even in an environment that was, no offense to our friends at Locked On Wizards, incredibly selfish. Jordan Poole, Kyle Kuzma were a mess. And it was expected that they were going to be a mess. Tyus Jones made them better. He functioned clearly at an above average rate. And so the question is, can this translate into something that works in Orlando in a more serious environment? Tyus Jones has played on a good team before. He played for the Memphis Grizzlies. Coming off the bench, was a solid 6th man. Everyone was eagerly anticipating him getting the chance to start. And we know what he can do. The 3-point shooting, the passing, the low turnovers, the efficiency. That's almost exactly what the Magic need. This is almost exactly what we're looking for. You can sell me on Tyus Jones, and maybe I'm selling you on Tyus Jones, and I'm about to rip the rug out from under you here in a minute. But when I'm thinking of the kind of point guard the Magic need, it's a guy like Tyus Jones. Someone who will set the table, make an open 3, make life easier for his teammates, but still stay out of the way so we can continue to let Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero explore their canvas and continue to explore the bounds of what they're capable of doing. Tyus Jones is that solid of a veteran player, and a veteran player is important in this too. But I've said this throughout the course of the offseason, there is no perfect player. There is no perfect option for this Magic team. There are questions about every stage of the Magic's development and growth, or every potential player that the Magic are chasing. And unfortunately, Tyus Jones does have some pretty big question marks, as perfect as he might seem on offense. We're going to get to the case against Tyus Jones coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word for our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the playoff action, win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during the playoffs. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks, turning $10 into $1,000 with basketball, hockey, and so much more available on America's #1 fantasy sports app. PrizePicks is something for every sports fan, from basketball and hockey to League of Legends and everything in between. You can pick LeBron, Caitlin Clark, Connor McDavid, Jude Bellingham, all in the same entry. PrizePicks is available now in Florida, but only with their game where you're grouped with other competitors. But still, PrizePicks gives you such a great opportunity to test your skills and play the more or less than game. All you have to do is pick more than or less than the projected stat and watch the winnings come in. PrizePicks is the game that I play, and I think you should too. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for your first deposit match of up to $100. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNBA on the PrizePicks app for a first deposit match of up to $100. It is, I cannot recommend this game enough. PrizePicks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. If you're like me, you work from home, you work remote, you're listening to sports, whether it's on podcasts or on TV, get the best sports information on the biggest stories in sports from local experts like me. That's where the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel comes in. If you want the lowdown on the Western Conference Finals, Locked On Mavericks and Locked On Timberwolves will be streamed throughout the day on Locked On Sports Day, along with all the top sports stories in the world. And the best part is you don't get the shouting, you don't get the hot takes, you get expert analysis and opinions from people who cover their teams every single day. That is the power of the Locked On Podcast Network. You can check it out streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, you probably heard all that stuff about Tyus Jones' offense and say, oh, that is great. That's exactly what the Magic need. It sounds too good to be true. And look, I'm going to sit here and say this. Unless Boston's willing to trade Derek White, there really is – Derek White is like what I'm looking for. I want to be on record on that. I want to find the closest thing I can to Derek White. Boston's not letting Derek White go. But Derek White is kind of what I'm thinking what the Magic need at point guard. That's not happening. So you're a lot of this summer is about figuring out what are you willing to compromise on a little bit. What do you feel like you can teach an incoming player about your culture, bringing them into your culture, and what is kind of the dividing line? Tyus Jones gives a lot to this team offensively. I'm not going to sit here and deny that. He fits the bill offensively. He does everything that I would hope for in a point guard for this team on offense. The questions are going to come on defense. And Tyus Jones is decidedly not anywhere close to the kind of defensive player and the kind of defensive profile that the Magic are looking for. He is 6'1". He is a small guard. He's a little bit older, so you got to be worried a little bit about decline. And all of his defensive numbers are not particularly strong. He's 6'1", 196, so he's strong. He's going to be able to take a hit, but he is on the small side Did average about a steal per game, but he's not overly disruptive. He doesn't get a lot of deflections, and the defensive numbers just don't look that good. Now, let's put a caveat on a lot of this. The Wizards were one of the worst defensive teams in the league. They were a bad defensive team, and obviously Tyus Jones is playing as a starter on the worst defensive team in the league. But even if you take that information, league worst 118.9 defensive rating, even if you take that information, the Wizards had a team worst 122.5 defensive rating with Jones on the floor. They were more than 3 points per 100 possessions worse defensively than their league worst average with Jones on the floor. Now, obviously, there's got to be someone that's worse, and a lot of their starters are on that range. So, okay, maybe that's just the Wizards thing. But let's talk about his time with the Grizzlies. In the 2023 season, coming off the bench for Memphis, the Grizzlies had a 111.6 defensive rating with Jones on the floor, but a 110.7 defensive rating overall. So, look, Jones can be part of good defensive teams, but he's not going to make your defense better. And is he as bad as he was with the Wizards? Probably not. That is a bad defensive culture. Memphis, a better defensive culture. Maybe you could make up for it a little bit here. But let's dive a little bit deeper into those numbers. Last year, according to NBA.com's tracking data, opponents shot 52.9% with Jones as the closest defender, as marked as the defender. That was 7 percentage points better than expected. Teams shot better going up against Jones. And at the end of the day, what we're thinking about with the Magic, at the end of the day, what we're worried about with the Magic is, are they going to be able to play in the playoffs? If Tyus Jones gets played off the floor in the playoffs, that's not a 4-year, $80 million investment, whatever the number is going to end up being. He's going to get more than 80 total. That's not a 4-year deal. That's not a 4-year investment. It's a stop. That makes Tyus Jones something of a stopgap point guard. Maybe that's what the Magic are looking for. Maybe they just want to fix the offense, get proof of concept about the offense, but you don't have you're starting to run out of years to waste. You got to start competing. And obviously this is the summer to spend. We made that very, very clear. This is the summer to spend. The other concern is that while he gives you a lot of offensive gifts, and I think he would have a big impact on the Magic's offense just because of his shooting and floor spacing, statistically, Jones has not had a humongously positive offensive effect. Despite how strong he's been as a shooter, how strong he is as a passer, how strong he is on turnovers, Jones didn't really meaningfully make the Wizards better. The Wizards were a little bit worse offensively than the Magic last year. So as good as Tyus Jones was, the Wizards were still a bad offensive team. A lot of their numbers are coming because of their pace. They played at the most possessions in the league. The Wizards had a 110.2 offensive rating overall, but only 110.6 with Jones on the floor. So a little bit better, but not enough to make us say, oh, Tyus Jones is the reason their offense functions. Like, when I look at these kind of on-off net ratings, what I'm really looking for is, okay, if it's significantly over the average, that tells us either this player is having a massive effect or the lineup scene are having a massive effect. Obviously, it's the Wizards. The Wizards were not good. So you take everything kind of compared to everyone else with the Wizards, he's not meaningfully making that offense any better. That's what that tells me. Let's take it back to the Grizzlies then. In 2023, the Grizzlies had a 114.7 offensive rating overall, but only 113.6 with Jones on the floor. Now, some of that might be Ja Morant is really freaking good, and he elevates that team's offense in a way that Tyus Jones can. And certainly 113.6 is something the Magic would kill for. If he has a 113.6 offensive rating and a 110.7, a 111.6 defensive rating when he's on the floor, that's a positive two points per 100 possessions. That's about maybe 45, 46 wins. That'll be okay for the Magic. I think they want to aim a little higher is I think where we're getting at. And look, we could do that. We could do that statistical analysis with Anthony Simons. It's probably going to come out the same. So maybe this isn't a concern. But we do have to think about, okay, coming from a bad Wizards team, what do we count as real and what do we count as they played a ridiculous fast pace. They played a ridiculous number of possessions, number one in the league again. And they're just racking up counting stats without actually impacting winning. That's really what matters is, does this impact winning? And that's, to me, the ultimate question about Tyus Jones. To me, that's ultimately where we come down on. And look, I'm not going to sit here and make conclusions. I think you want me to do that. I don't know who the Magic should target quite yet. I wake up some days and I think D'Angelo Russell is the answer, like a kind of a more turnover prone but souped up version of Tyus Jones. Some days I think, look, go get Anthony Simons, young kid. You could still groom him a little bit defensively. He's never been asked to play defense in his life. But again, I would say this honestly, like, I do think the Magic need a more elevated offensive player. In case Jalen Suggs is your kind of 12 to 15 point per night guy. Let's put the profile this way. Paolo and Franz are going to get you 20 a night each. Paolo, you hope is going to get to 25. Franz, you hope is going to get to 20. Jalen Suggs probably going to be that 12 to 14 range. Some nights will get you 20, some nights you won't. I think you need another 15 to 18 point per game guy. And I think that you need a guy that on some occasions will get you 30. You need a third 30-point scorer. And maybe that's still Jalen Suggs. And so ultimately, when it comes to a player like Tyus Jones, you're really asking the question, what do the Magic actually need? How fast do the Magic actually need to move? What risks can they take? Tyus Jones to me is a very safe choice. But is he going to actually elevate this team? And that gets to the heart of the big question this offseason. We're going to talk about that coming up here in just a moment. So we closed that last segment kind of wondering if Tyus Jones is the answer. If a player like Tyus Jones, who checks a lot of boxes, is just really solid in a lot of areas, but may be weak in one of the more important areas, whether that is the direction the Magic should go and want to go. We talked with Keith Smith earlier in the week about this. And, he said on our second episode, this feels like the kind of summer where the Magic aren't going to go all in on anybody. So, we all saw the Trae Young video, Jalen Suggs working out in Dallas. Trae Young was there. Jalen reposted an Instagram, something on Instagram. We all saw it. These guys are all friends. Whatever. But it doesn't feel likely to me that the Magic are going to push those chips in to get like a third star or a more established third star. Let's put it that way. I think they are looking for that kind of a player, but this is the question that Jeff Weltman has to ask himself. Clearly the Magic are close. Clearly the Magic are cooking with some fire. Things are heating up. We can, the chemistry of cooking is happening. And we saw last year how good this team can be. We saw last year what this team is capable of doing. No doubt about it. Now we have to figure out, okay, how fast can this team go? What areas are we willing to tinker with? Now, I would argue the Magic are not willing to tinker with Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner are our two guys. So if you are a more established veteran star who's going to demand the ball and demand shots and take away some of these take away kind of the leadership of Paolo and Franz, I'm not interested in that. So I'm out on Trae Young. I'm even out on DeJounte Murray, to be perfectly honest. I'm out on Klay Thompson. I'm out on Paul George. Klay Thompson, a little less than, but I'm out on him for other reasons. But the Magic aren't looking for leadership. Now, they need guys who can support and give experience, but they're not looking for someone to challenge Paolo at the top of the mountain. That was the mistake Cleveland made. Cleveland, it seemed, had this young roster, threw in Donovan Mitchell into the mix, and all of a sudden, the pecking order completely changed. And, I've even seen some reporting and some think pieces saying this is, Brian Windhorst, I think, said it. Donovan Mitchell is running the Cleveland Cavaliers right now. The Magic don't want that smoke. They don't want that. Paolo is the guy. Franz is the Robin or the 1A, whatever, 1B, whatever you want to call it. Those are your guys. And so now it's been about supporting them. And so how best do you support those players? Where does Jalen Suggs fit into this? And that is ultimately some of the questions the Magic have to start answering or tinkering with. Look, Jalen Suggs is the heart and soul of this defense. No one is supplanting him on that front. But if you bring in an Anthony Simons, does Suggs bristle at getting fewer shots? It feels like he understands what his offensive role should be. And he did a very good job tempering and controlling some of his worst instincts from his first 2 years. But do the Magic want to see that re-expand now that he's established himself again? And then the ultimate question should be, is a player like Tyus Jones enough to get you to the next level, to get you to the next step? Nothing risked, nothing gained. You've got to take a risk here. You've got to make a bet on adding something or someone to the roster. And Tyus Jones is a very safe player. You know what you're getting with him. You know you're getting XYZ. And whether you're going after Malik Monk, who I can't believe I haven't mentioned yet, Malik Monk, Anthony Simon, DeJounte Murray, whoever it is, Malcolm Brogdon and Tyus Jones, I think, are in the really safe category. Is the Magic's appetite for risk there to say, okay, we don't just need a table setter. We need another guy who can get us 30, who can get hot, who can play, at a star level for a week when guys are hurt in the middle of January. If that's what the Magic need, then Tyus Jones ain't it. And Tyus Jones is not the speed the Magic are moving. The Magic are moving at a much faster pace in that regard. But if the Magic truly believe, look, we were in a game 7. We were a half away from advancing to the second round. We were a bad week, a random Franz Wagner injury away from being the 3 seed. We were inexperienced in games 1 and 2 away from winning our series anyway. If that is how the Magic truly feel, and all they really feel they need is calm, composure, and a veteran, Tyus Jones is your guy. That's the speed the Magic are going to move at. I get the feeling the Magic want to move a little faster. I get the feeling that Tyus Jones' shortcomings, ultimately, that's not the risk the Magic want to take. This offseason is about moderation, in my opinion. It is about understanding where you're at and still giving and adding to it, but still giving it room to grow. But it's also about risk management. It's also about understanding the bets you're willing to make with this roster. And then making and executing those bets and seeing where the cards fall. It's a big offseason, no doubt about it. And if the Magic do end up signing Tyus Jones, it'll be a good signing. Like, I'm not against it. Like, I'm coming out against it and saying I don't think it's what the Magic should do, but I'm not against it. He is a good player, a solid player who will help this team. But it may not be the kind of aggressive move the Magic need to take to elevate this group one step further. As we've said this a million times as this team has ran the roster back over and over again. There is no standing still in the NBA. You're either moving forward or moving backward. And it's not that the Magic have to sell out to keep their spot, but they need to be aggressive to steal someone else's. And that's really what's at stake this offseason. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, and Odyssey, and all of them make single podcast to your podcast-enabled listening device. You can check us out on YouTube. Just search for Locked On Magic. We're closing in on 3,000 subscribers, so I thank you all for subscribing on YouTube. If you haven't done so already, please do so. It helps us out a ton. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. I have coming up tomorrow 3 players who lost the most in the playoffs, so you'll be able to check that out. I think 2 of the picks are obvious. I think I made a surprise pick on one of them, but we'll see what you think. We'll probably talk a little bit about that next week. We're going to talk about Franz Wagner next week. We're going to get into all Franz Wagner things at some point next week as well. I also want to announce and say I've been approached by a few people kind of walking out and about in Orlando. I really appreciate everyone who listens to the show and everyone who sees me out in public and says, hey, I listen. I really do appreciate all of you. I do have goodies coming to you. If you do find me, I have these wonderful stickers. If you're watching on the YouTube with the Locked On Magic logo, I will be carrying a few in my wallet at all times until they run out and I have to order more. But if you see me, come up, say hi. Really do appreciate all of you. I do this for you guys. I really do. So I appreciate everyone who listens, and I'm going to try and give some of that love back. Met some people in Cleveland for games 1 and 2 during games 1 and 2. Saw some people, saw someone at Epcot a few weeks ago. Took a photo with them. Really always excited to meet you all and really, want to share some love back. So if you do see me, come say hi. I promise I don't bite, and I'm usually not super duper busy. So if you see me around, come say hi as well. Like I said, next week we're going to kind of reset ourselves a little bit. I'm going to hope to have a guest at some point next week, but we will do NBA Finals preview, talk a little bit about what we're learning from the conference finals in Monday's episode. We'll get to Draft Tuesday again on Tuesday. We'll do another case for and against with free agents and whatever other, we'll talk Franz Wagner. So our week is already pretty busy next week, but we'll see what else pops up and comes out through the woodwork as well. Now that you're done listening to us, be sure to check out the Locked On Sports Day 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube and now available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Day is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Day now available on the free Fire TV channels app. That's going to do it for me. That's going to do it for May. For in June, draft time is here. We'll get to so much over the next month as we get ready for the draft, as we get ready for free agency, as we get through the NBA Finals. Lots to get to. As always, have a great weekend, everyone. For Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, it's been Philip Rossman. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.